everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this event. We are just going to give it a couple minutes for people to stream in and to probably jump from another Zoom call into this one before we get started. But in the meantime, if you've been joining us for the other event, again, you know what's coming. I'm going to ask everyone to please share, where you're calling in from as well as your name so that we just have a better understanding of who's in the live Zoom room with us today. And before you send out that message, if I can also just remind you to please toggle that to everyone. I think Zoom auto default that to just the host and the panelists alone. So if you keep to that, only myself and John can see your message. So be sure to toggle that to the bigger group so that everyone in the creator group can see your message. All right, so I see that we have a couple of first taker over here, and I like that the first two are already very different. So we have Jaslyn calling in from sunny Singapore. Yeah, it is yet another sunny day in Singapore. I feel like it's always sunny here, but very rarely do we have a cool and rainy day, but we always appreciate those. But we also have CJ calling in from Melbourne. Thank you so much, CJ. I just caught up with John and he said that it's a cooling day in Melbourne, so very nice. Oh no, CJ has confirmed that it is a bit of a wet and cold day, so maybe not. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We also have Offs calling in from the Philippines, and we have Mark calling in from Brisbane. Sunny here too. Yes, we are with you. It's another sunny day here in Singapore. Right, and as we have been talking about the weather, for those of you who haven't joined us, let us know where you're calling in from, maybe the weather where you are, as well as your name, so that we just have a better understanding of who's joining us in this morning Singapore time. All right, we also have Zay. I think Zay has been joining us for a couple of sessions now. I do see Zay's name coming up here and there. So thank you so much for your support throughout the sessions. Hope you have been enjoying them so far. So Zay is calling in from Nam, Melbourne. All right. We also have Nikita calling in from Sydney. Anyone else calling in from the other cities in Australia or elsewhere in the world? Let us know in the chat. Yeah. I'm just going to drop that message in the chat again in case you're new and is wondering, what I'm going on about. We're just maybe going to give it 3 to 4 more minutes for people to trickle in and get settled out before we get started. But in the meantime, my favorite thing to do while waiting for people to trickle in is to get to know the audience who are joining us for that session. So share with us, where you're tuning in from, the weather where you are, because we've been talking about the weather all this while, and also maybe your name, so that we just have a better understanding of who's sitting in the same Zoom room with us today. But so far, I've seen lots of folks calling in from Australia, from Singapore. I think someone's calling in from the Philippines as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We also have Don calling in from Hong Kong. Hi, Don. And moving a bit too fast for me. Howdy, calling in from Montana, USA. That's great. I think it's a bit late in the US at the moment, so thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We also have Mizelle and Cass, both calling in from Singapore. And so Nicholas has confirmed that Singapore is insanely hot. Yes, it is hot all the time. But today is hotter than usual, I feel. We also have Nicole calling in from Melbourne, Matt calling in from the US, I'm about to butcher someone's name. I'm so sorry about this. Sergio calling in from Costa Rica. Vivian calling in from Adelaide. That's great. I feel like we are slowly ticking off all of the Australian cities right now. Very glad to have everyone here. Sydney is pretty hot. Oh, 26 degrees. I would like to defer and say that 26 degrees is pretty cooling in Singapore terms for us. Right, so I see that we are 2 minutes past the start time, and I know that we have a lot of things to cover, so I'm not going to take any more of your time. I'm just going to go ahead and do my very quick bit of introduction. And as I'm doing my introduction, hopefully people can still trickle in as I'm going through this very quick set of slides and before John gets started. All right, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this event, which is actually part of our The 2030 Movement series, which, as the name suggests, is a very future forward, looking looking ahead at the future, the decade ahead, what does it hold for us? So if you look at our lineup, it's actually a lot of events focusing on things like emerging technologies, evolving industry trends, cultures that are shaping the way that we work, live, and play. So we are really putting together this event series to prepare you, our community members, for the decade that is ahead. So we have actually today is the last day of week 1, and we are a little bit bummed about that. Things have been moving along pretty quickly, but we still have week 2 ahead. So there's still lots of things for you to learn, to discover from our amazing leaders and speakers and partners. So do join us for week 2 if you can. So for this particular event, this is in partnership with Supabase, and we are so excited to be able to bring you, I think this topic has been coming up pretty heavily in discussions in the past year and maybe the past couple of years, which is the future of coding codeless. We have a lot of innovations that are coming up ahead. It's making it a lot easier for us to put together applications and websites without actually knowing how to do intense coding. But is that the future? Is it going to be still around in the next decade or so? We're going to uncover that today. So that's why today we are so excited to bring John, who is the developer advocate at Supabase, to share with us more about this topic. I'll leave it to John to do his self-introduction later on, but I'm just here to do a very quick introduction. All right, so just before we begin, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our partners and speakers. All of their lovely logos are over here. They are the real heroes behind this event series. They have very generously come together, share with us their insight, their time, and their thoughts on what's ahead. So you can, feel free to catch them in our other events, as well as on our website, the 2030movement.com, which I think should be on this side of my head. Yeah. Right, so just a very quick note on how to participate in today's session. Again, if you've been joining us since the start, just bear with me. I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page on how to make the most of today's session. So in case you haven't noticed yet, this is a webinar, so you are not visible or audible to anyone else in the audience, so no worries about distracting backgrounds or noises. But if you want to participate in today's and ask your burning question, then highly suggest that you do so. Take advantage of being here with an expert. Which you can do so via the chat and the Q&A. So the chat, we ask that you use it mostly to introduce yourself, to make comments, or to answer any questions that John might be posing to you later on. But if you have any questions at all, whether that is to GA, to Supabase, to John, of course, on the topic, please be sure to pop those in the Q&A box. It will really just make it a lot easier for us to have all of the questions in the same place, and that we can be sure that we're not missing out on any of your questions. All right, so as I mentioned, this is the first event of the last day of week 1. After this, half an hour after this one ends, we have another sessions on, for those of you who are looking to break into tech, how do you, use your current outsider advantage to break into this very exciting field. So do join us over there if you have some time after this and you don't mind, just tuning in to hear a little bit more. Then yes, there's another session right after this. And then on Monday, we have a session with Bumble to find out more about how do you reboot social interactions for the new norm. So a lot of us are very, anxious about just resuming normal life. How do you resume those social interactions? Then do join us on Monday as well. Yeah, and another sessions on why do the best companies not care about your background? Recruitments are changing, hiring are changing. People might not place too much about your background, but it's really more about your skills, your experience. So if you're keen to find out more about that, then do join us on Tuesday as well. Again, you can see there's a lot of links over there, but really the only link that you should know is the main website link, which is the 2030movement.com. So do join us over there, check out what sessions we still have coming up ahead, and join us for the next week's session. All right, so in case you haven't noticed, every session in this series is assigned to a theme, and we assume that this one is under transformative technologies. We assume that if you like this one, you probably will like the other one under this the same theme as well. So everything is here. Do check them out on the website as well. All right, and after this session, if you'd like to take your learning one step further, you can use this discount code over here to take 50% off all of our paid workshops. And just one note that it expires on the last day of the series. So do, try to take advantage of this as soon as possible and join us for another workshop. All right, and after this, you will actually also hear more from us. We'll be sending out the recording as well as some other message from Supabase. So do keep a lookout for that, and you can just reply to that to reach us. But what we ask from you is that we're going to be sending out a survey form after this. So we ask that you take a couple minutes of your time to help us complete that. So we just have that very valuable information to continuously improve on our future events. And last but not least, a very shameless plug to please follow us on our social media platform. We post about great events like this one, as well as other exciting things that are happening in the GA APAC region. All right, and that is all from me. I will not take any more of your time. I will pass over the time to John to get us up on how what Codeless is and how we can take advantage of that. So over to you, John.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. Let me just share my screen. Over here. All right. Hello, my name is John Myers. Today I'll be going through this talk on whether the future of coding is codeless. And so in this talk, we're going to go through some no-code and low-code options. We're going to be looking at how we can connect Supabase to Clutch.io and build an application with very minimal code. There's a little bit of code that we'll need to write, but not much. So firstly, who am I? So I'm John Myers. I'm a developer advocate at Supabase. And you can follow me at _DJohnMusters on Twitter. And what is no code? So as the name suggests, no code requires no coding at all to build a website. And so usually these are click and drag GUIs that allow you to kind of click things together, draw lines between different components, and be able to build a useful application without needing to write any code at all. So this is perfect for non-technical people or people who don't have a coding background to still be able to build useful things. So this is great for building internal tooling and prototypes. And so if you have some kind of tool that you could build that would increase the efficiency of you being able to do your job, then using something like a no-code tool would be perfect for that, to be able to build that without needing to kind of prioritize that feature to go through the whole product team and assign some development time to work on it. You can kind of click together something that works enough and then maybe prioritize a little bit of time to add some of those more complex features later. This is also awesome for fast feedback cycles. And so, as I said, you don't need to kind of prioritize that feature through your whole organization. You could just build out a prototype, get it in front of your users and get those really fast feedback cycles as to whether this feature is something that's worth spending some more time on. So what is low code? So low code is similar to no code. You should be able to accomplish useful things without any code. So you would expect that you'd be able to build something, and code is used more as an escape hatch. And so once you want to do something that's kind of outside of the norm for that particular piece of software, you can write some code to allow you to build that feature. And so that can also mean that you can build more advanced features because you don't need to kind of stay within the walls of what that application has been built to create. So some examples of a no-code tool might be something like Zapier or if then that, if this then that. So these are tools where you just have a collection of boxes and you can essentially wire them together with lines. And some low-code examples might be something like ScreenFlow or potentially WordPress or something like that. So what is Supabase? Supabase is a backend as a service. So this means we create a database for you, an API to access that database, and kind of make it very simple for you to build an application. We're built on entirely open source tools. And so, yeah, the community can contribute to Supabase and make it better. But also if something doesn't exist that your company needs, you can actually build it into Supabase because the source is open. The core kind of pieces of Supabase are a database, auth, so we handle authentication and authorization, and then real-time and file storage. In this talk, we'll just be going through the database part, but auth, real-time, and file storage are definitely worth checking out later. So what is Clutch.io? So Clutch is a super powerful website builder. It allows us to build out a UI by just dragging and dropping different elements around. It also allows you to install NPM packages, which really changes the game in what you can build with Clutch. It makes it a very, very powerful website builder. It's built with this model of components in mind. So this is kind of comes from the, I guess, React world or Angular, those kinds of web frameworks where everything is built into these little reusable components, and we can kind of click together a UI by using these different components together. And so this is something that Clutch really leans into as the whole, you'll see when we build the Clutch IO application, the whole application is kind of built around this component model. It also has design front of mind. And so you'll see once we get into Clutch, it looks very much like you're building out a Figma template or a prototype in Figma. The difference is that you can then click publish and you have a website live on the internet, which is very cool. So let's build an application. So we're going to be building a to-do list app today. So we're going to want to manage our to-dos, want to be able to add new to-dos and then mark to-dos as complete. So we're going to be using Supabase and Clutch together. They work very nicely together. Clutch actually has an extension built for Supabase. So we'll be building all of our database layer in Supabase and then using Clutch to build out our UI. And at the end, this is going to be live on the internet. So we'll actually have a hosted URL that we can give to people and they will be able to go to our website. And that should not be jumping to there. Cool. So let's jump into a demo. So here I have my Supabase dashboard. So I have signed up for an account, a free account, and I just want to create a new project. So I'm going to create this in my examples organization. And this project is just going to be called GA Clutch example. And we need a strong password here. So I've got one in my clipboard. Make sure this is a very strong password, as this will be the password to your database. And then we need to select a region where we want this to actually be hosted. I'm going to select Sydney because this is close to me, but ideally you would want this to be close to your users, so wherever they are. Cool, so I'm just creating my Supabase project now. And as I said before, this is building us a database, it's building us an API, it's setting up auth and all of this other stuff that we won't actually be using now, but all of that infrastructure takes some time. So while that's building and scaling that up, we can go and build out our clutch.io app. So here I have clutch.io. Again, I've signed up for a free account. I'm going to click new project here, and I could just give this the same name, whatever it was, GA Clutch example. And now I'm going to create that project. So this is also going to take a little bit to build out our front end because it's doing a lot of stuff in the background. But now that this is loaded, you'll see that this looks very familiar if you have ever worked with Figma or any of those kinds of design tools. We can create a frame, which is just going to be basically the page of our application. So I'm going to select desktop. I might go iMac because my screen resolution is set a little bit low for this example, just so that it's easy to read. And I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see it. So this is basically just my website. And so I can add what I would like my users to be able to see. So the first thing I want to do is connect this to Supabase. And so I'm going to add a new component here. And as I said before, there is a Supabase extension that has been built. Let's go to the marketplace just so we don't get overwhelmed by all that. We have this Supabase extension, which has been built by Paul Schneider. And if we click install on this, you'll see that this is going to install a collection of components that we can then use in our Clutch project. And this is something that's really cool about clutch.io is this marketplace has a whole bunch of extensions that have been built either by the community or by Clutch themselves. And really, kind of gives us some really neat superpowers to be able to build our application. Cool. So now that we have installed that, we can bring in our Supabase provider. So I'm going to bring that into my component tree. And now that we have a little bit going on, I can explain these different panels. So on the left here, we have a tree of components. So this is similar to a React project where you have a collection of components that have children components. And yeah, this might look very familiar if you're used to something like React. In the middle here, we have our design tool. And so this looks very similar to Figma. And so this allows us to kind of build up our component tree, but then also like style how we want it to look in the middle here, which is very nice. And then on the right, we have the different properties for our components. And so this is kind of like props that you might pass into your components to make them display different ways. So here for my Supabase provider, you'll see that I need a URL and I need an anon key. So if I come back over to Supabase, we'll see this is finished building. And if I scroll down a little bit, I've got my project API keys here, so I can copy my anon key and put that here. And I can copy my URL and put that here. And now if I click refresh, this is actually now connected to that Supabase instance. So we don't have any feedback in the application here, but this is now connected to our database. So if we want to display some stuff on our page from our database, we need to go and create a table and put some data in our database. So over here on the left, we have a table editor. So I can come in here to create my to-do table. And click create new table. This one's going to be called to-do. We have some auto-generated columns here for ID created at and updated at, so we can leave those. But we want to add a title. And this is going to be of type text. So this is just a text field. And then we're also going to have a is complete field. And this is going to be a Boolean, which just means true or false. For our is complete, we're going to set a default value to be false, because anytime we create a new to-do, it wouldn't make sense if that to-do was already complete. Otherwise, we wouldn't be adding it to our to-do list. So we're just going to leave the default value as false. And as I click save, this is going to create a table in our database. It's going to create those columns for us. And then we'll be able to populate it with some data. Awesome. So now you'll see that we have this kind of like Excel spreadsheet looking interface where we can insert new rows. So again, ID, created at, updated at, and is complete are all going to be set for us, but we can set the title of our to-do. So we could say display to-dos in clutch. And save that one. And then we could insert another row to make look good. Cool. So now we have some data in our database. Now let's look at actually displaying that in our clutch application. So we have this provider, and then inside our provider, we want to add a select. And so this is going to come in from that Supabase library. And so this is going to select the data that's in our database so that we can display it. Now on this select query component, we need to tell it which entity we'd like to select from. So this is our table. So we can say our to-do table is what we want to grab the data from. And then for columns, we've got star, which just means we're going to pull in all of the columns. So we could specify specific columns we want to pull in, but this is just going to grab all of those. And again, if we refresh, we don't see anything because we've grabbed all of that data, but we haven't actually displayed it. And so we have a list of different to-dos. And so we want to be able to iterate over those to-dos and display them in our application. So the first thing we need to bring in here is a for each loop. So this is coming in from the logic package, which is just some like mathematical logic that we can do. And so this is going to allow us to iterate over a collection of items. And so we can set those items to be an expression. And then we can set that expression to come in from our select query. We can say index 0. We want to pull this in from our state, and we want that to come in from our data. And now you'll see that we have an array of all of our to-do data there. that we're iterating over. And so now we just need to tell it how to actually display it in our application. So if we bring in a text element, and you'll see that it's displayed two lorem ipsum text blocks. And so it's actually bringing in the right number of elements because it's iterating over our list of to-dos, and we have 2 to-dos, but it's just displaying the demo text. And so if we want to update that, we can again set this to an expression, and we can pull that in from our for each. And so we're iterating over each item in there, and then we want to grab the item's title. And there we go. We're displaying our data from Supabase. And if I was to go and add, just to show you that I'm not cheating, if I was to add another row here to say, show it works, and add that to my Supabase database, and then come over here and click refresh, we'll get that additional to do in there. So all of these are displaying on the same line. This doesn't look very good. So let's introduce a little bit of styling. We can add a box, which is just sort of like a visual separator of a collection of bits on our page. And so for each of our items, I'm just going to wrap them in a box, which looks like this. And I'm just going to drag the text into the box. Oops, drag the text into the box. So it's displaying inside the box rather than next to it. So yeah, the hierarchy of where things are matters in Clutch. And actually, we'll show you an example of that now. If I add inside this box a checkbox, just so that we can mark our to-do as complete, you'll see that that checkbox is displaying after our to-do because that is following that text element in this tree. And so if I was to pull this up above there, you'll see that it's displayed in front of it. Yeah, cool. So our to-do list is starting to come together. We probably want to do a little bit more styling. All of this is up in the top left, which doesn't look very great. It also doesn't have any kind of contextual title as to what we're actually looking at. I'd be pretty confused if I came to this website and just saw this list in the top left. And so let's create a little bit of space around our components and yeah, make this look a little bit better. So up here at the top of our of all of our components that we're displaying on the page, we want to add another box. And we want to put this for each inside that box. And then we can do a little bit of styling on this box. So over here on the Styles tab, you'll see that we have a whole bunch of layout stuff, typography stuff, a whole bunch of visual layout options to change how our page looks. And so for this box, I'm just going to set the background to be a disgusting red, just so that we can see it. Cool. And so we'll see that that's taking up 100% of our page, and it's only the height is only as high as our elements that are on the page. And so we probably want this to extend all the way to the bottom. And so we can do that by coming back up to the top here, and we can set a minimum height. And so we want our minimum height to be 100 VH, which is viewport height. So this is going to at least take up one full viewport. And then if our to-dos continue to extend beyond that point, then we'll just be able to keep scrolling. But this means if we set a background color for our whole application, it looks a little bit more natural, which is nice. It also looks a little bit weird having this up in the top left. So we probably want to bring these in a little bit and create kind of like the illusion of a page. We probably want a column running down the middle of our page, and then any extra space we want to put left and right. So in order to do that, we can say we want a max width to be 900 pixels. So this is as wide as we want our main container to get. And then you'll see that this white space has come over on the right here. And so if we want half of that to be on the left and center this red block in the middle, we can just set the margin on the left to auto and the margin on the right to auto. Awesome. So this is looking a little bit better. We also want to add some kind of title to say what we're actually looking at here. So again, we can bring in a text element, can put this above our for each. And we want this one to have the text to-dos. And now we can change the type of tag that we're actually using here. So a span is just for any kind of generic text. But if we want this to be a heading, we can use a H1 element, just going to make it look a little bit bigger. It's also going to show us that the font doesn't look that great. It's kind of the dirty built-in font family for websites without any styling. And so we might want to change that font family on the box, which is going to kind of flow down through all of our components in that tree. And so I'm going to set this to be Helvetica, if I can spell it. Awesome. And that looks a little bit better. We also might want to add, or we can turn off that awful red now, just so we don't forget about it. Trash that one, go back to our white. And now we can give a little bit of spacing above our to-dos. And so we can give it a margin of maybe 300 pixels, and that's probably a bit much. So let's go 200. Nice. And we'll give it a little bit of space underneath. So we'll say maybe like 32 pixels. And then maybe each of these boxes, we want to have a little bit of space above and below. So let's maybe say 16 pixels above, 16 pixels below, and then maybe we want them to be in a little bit too. So we could say 16, 16. Cool. So now we've got a little bit more space. That looks a little bit nicer, which is good. So now that we have a beautiful application, now we want to share it with the world. And so we want to show everyone our beautiful to-do list, show them all the things that we're working on. And so in Clutch, this is super, super easy. We can just come up here and click publish, and then we just need to create a destination. So I'm just going to call this, I don't know, hosting. And then I need to pick a type of hosting. So we have a whole bunch of different types of projects that you can create with Clutch. In this case, this is going, I want to use Clutch hosting, which is just going to give me a free subdomain on Clutch. So basically, the ID of my project .clutch.io will be a URL that I can share with other people. I'm also going to set it to auto release. And so this means anytime we create a new version, it's going to automatically deploy that for us. And then I need to pick the frame that I want as the default frame for this version that I'm publishing. So I didn't actually change the name of that. So it's called iMac 1, but this is what it looks like. So that looks good. I'm going to say create destination. And then down here, I need to pick a version that I want to deploy. You'll see here that we don't have any options because we haven't created a version yet. So let's do that now. So I can create version 0.0.0. So this is our V1. This is our beautiful to-do list, and I can create a version. And then, as we said before, because we've clicked auto release, when I create a new version, it's automatically going to deploy that to production. So you'll see there's a release in progress. And if I come down here, I can see what's actually happening. So we'll wait for all of this to go green, so we get that very satisfying feeling that everything went well. Awesome. And you'll see that that is now saying that export is ready. We're seeing lots of green here, which is good. Lots of green here, which is good. And so this is now being deployed. And if I click this little play button, it's going to open my unique URL for this version. So I could now copy this and I could bring it over to the chat, if I can get that. Chat, there we go. All right, and I can paste that into the chat. And then everyone who is watching this can actually go to this live website, because this is now just a live URL that exists on the internet. And everyone would be able to see my to-dos, which is very cool. But we probably want to make this a little bit more useful. We probably want to be able to actually add a new to-do, because right now we can see a list of them, but we'd have to come into Supabase itself to be able to add a new to-do. So if we want to do this in our application, we're going to need an input. So I want to put an input here where I can type in my to-do, a button that I can click add, and then that's going to write it to my Supabase database. So I want this to be above my for each. So I'm going to add this here. We're going to use the Formic library because it just makes working with forms and inputs a little bit easier. So I'm going to add that, and it is possibly going to come in. All right, let's try that again. Yeah, sorry, inside our box, Formic. Cool, and that's brought that in there. I'm going to bring it up here so it's just in between my to-dos and my actual list of things. For Formic, we don't need to tell it anything yet, but inside this, we want to add a form. And then we want to add a field, which is where we're actually going to enter in our new to-do. And so the name of this form, the name of this input is going to be title, because that's the name of our column that we want to update in Supabase. And we can also give the ID that same title ID. Now, because we've created a new field up in Formic, we need to tell it what the initial value for that is. And so if I expand this out and say add initial values, I can say I want an initial value for title. And then I can set this to anything I want, like hangout washing, for example. And then if I was to refresh my application, we would see hangout washing as being the default text that's inside my input. So we actually just want this to be blank, but we just need to make sure that we set an initial value for it. Cool, so that's looking good. The other thing that I'm going to need is a button to actually submit my new to-do. So I'm going to add that inside the form next to my input field. So I'm going to add a button. And then we want this button to be a submit. And so we want this to submit our form, which is what's going to send our information to Supabase. And so we need to tell our application how to actually do that. We also probably want to change this text so we can see our button. So we can say add, and we'll see we've got our button there now. I can change this to interaction mode, which is this little finger here. And then I can click through my application as if I was using it on the website. So that's how we can highlight our input field and actually enter something. So if we did want to hang out our washing, we want to be able to click add and this send it off to Supabase. So we need to tell Formic how to do that. We can do that with this onSubmit field. So basically we want to call a function when we submit our form, which is going to go and talk to Supabase. To do that, we're going to need to bring in our update query from our Supabase library. And then we need to tell it which table we would like to update. So again, to do is the one that we're dealing with today. And this is a good point to point out that this is that the hierarchy within this tree matters. So if I collapse this down so that we just see that these two are siblings, we've got our select query and we've got our update query. And so anything that's inside that select tree isn't going to be able to see anything that is it's not a direct descendant of. And so if these two are siblings, it means that this form belongs to Box and it belongs to the select query and it belongs to the provider, but it's not in the same tree as this update query. And so if we wanted to call a function that we get from this update query, like on submit here, if we were to say, we want to set this to an expression, and that expression, you see that we've only got our provider and our select. We can't actually see our update. But if I was to drag this box into our update, so they're all in the same tree, then when I do the same thing, if I say set expression, you can see that we've got that Supabase update query. Yeah, so the sequence of that matters in terms of where it is in the vertical hierarchy, and the visual part of it matters on where it is on the as a sibling. Sorry, that's probably going a little bit too deep, but inside our update query, we have this update function. And so basically we want to call this function, and don't worry about all this scary stuff. We just need to call that and pass it the values that we would like to update to. And so this is probably the kind of the line where we cross over from no code to low code, because in this case, we're going to have to write a little bit of logic to do this. So I'm going to do this over in VS Code just so that we can see it a little bit clearer than in that little window. So this is the function that we want to create. So this is a JavaScript function. Formic will automatically pass us all of the values into the function that we give to onSubmit. And so values.title is going to equal whatever the value in this input is. So if I come back here, type something in, values.title will be equal to that text. So all we're saying here is we're calling an insert function, which is telling Supabase that we want to insert a new row. And we want to set the title column to be whatever is inside that input. So I can copy this function here and we can paste it into our expression section. And then we just need to tell it that this insert fx is not just text. This is a special thing that's coming in from this other component. And so we just need to highlight that and then click insert on our update fx, and we'll see that that goes blue. So that means it's wired up correctly. And we seem to have lost our to-dos. All right, yes, these are still siblings. So yes, we need to put the update query as a child of the select query, just so that it has access to those to-dos. And I'll just refresh just to make sure everything is all good. And then if I said hang out washing and click add, you'll see that we don't get any feedback in our application at all. If we come over to our Supabase instance though and refresh, it is also not there. And so we've made some kind of mistake somewhere. So let's have a look. We have our update query that's linked to our to-do. We have Formic, which is doing that with our function. And if we click add again, all right, maybe we'll try quickly rewriting this in here just in case it doesn't like any of the formatting that we've done. So let's say that values is being passed to this function. And we want to say update fx. And we want to pass this an object. And we want to set the title column to values.title. And we'll refresh this just in case. And let's see if we have our new to-do. And we do not. Okay, so something is going wrong in our tree. We've got that, we've got that. That's going to-do. That's the name of our table. This all belongs to that hierarchy. Okay, and let's check if we've got anything in the console that's related to testing. Let's click add. Update should always be, I have selected the wrong thing. So this is the update query. And so we want to swap this for a, we might need to pull this stuff out. So I'm just going to pull this into select, and rather than update, we'll use that soon. So we'll just leave it in the tree. But yes, this is actually an insert because we are going to be inserting new data. Cool. So I'm going to drag these back into here and drag, sorry, back into our insert, and then our insert into our select query. Cool. And now in our Formic, we just need to tell Formic we want to use, rather than our update function, live coding, huh? We want to use our insert function. And now when we save and we say we want to hang out the washing, and actually before we forget, our table needs to be to-do. And now when we click add, go back to our Supabase instance and refresh. It's still not there. Oh man, something else is going on. We've got our table to do. It's an insert query, Formic, not happy with me. Insert function, title, blah, blah, blah. That is all looking good. Maybe just refresh one more time and say, hang out the washing. This time I've got an exclamation mark, so it'll definitely work. And if we head back over to Supabase, okay, cool. We've got that there. So maybe because I didn't refresh, it didn't wire everything up correctly. But now we have this value, but we didn't get any feedback in the UI. So we couldn't see that new to do in our list. If we were to refresh now, we'll see it appear at the bottom. But that kind of doesn't make sense if we want our users to refresh every time they add a new to do. It makes more sense for them to be able to add it, click add, and it show up at the bottom. And so our function needs to get a little bit more advanced here. So this insert function is going to go off to Supabase. It's going to write to that table. And then when it's done doing that, it's going to come back. So this is an asynchronous function. And so this is something that doesn't happen straight away. It needs to wait for Supabase to do some things. So if we wanted to reload our page once that data had been added to Supabase, we just need to mark this function as asynchronous. And we need to say that we need to await that insert function. And then after we get back the value from that, we want to await our select query. So we can run our select query again and get all of the values in our to-do table. And so now if I say, really hope this works, I'll do my exclamation mark again, so it'll definitely work. Awesome. And so that appears at the bottom there. We're running a little bit low on time, but I'll just quickly run through what we would do for update in case you wanted to use this in your own project. And so I'm going to drag the box into update and update into insert. So they're all in the same tree. I'm going to make sure that update has our table for to do. And then this checkbox doesn't actually do anything at the moment. If I tick it, it doesn't mark that to do as done. And even if I was to go and mark one of these as true in our database, so display to-dos in clutch should be true. If we come back here and refresh, we'll see that that's still display to-dos in clutch still doesn't have that checkbox checked. And so if we want to set that value based on the actual data that we're getting back from Supabase, we can again set this to an expression and set the expression to this item's is complete field. And then you'll see that that one is checked. But if we want to check another one of these, and we want that to actually update the data in the database, then we need to wire it up to update that data using our update query. And so here with our onChange, again, we can set this to an expression. So anytime we change the value of this checkbox, we want to call our update function. And this one looks a little bit more scary. I'm going to quickly run through what the code is doing. So again, we want to await our update function to go and do that stuff. We give it one object, which is the value that we want to change. So we want to set the is complete field or our column in Supabase to be true. And then we pass it a function to tell it that we want this to only happen where the ID column equals our ID from that specific checkbox. And so if I copy this query in here, and then again, we need to tell it that our update query is this, the update function is this special update function, and that this ID is that special ID for our item. And then we probably want to, I'm running out of space, let's zoom out. We probably want to await that select query again. So we probably want to go and get that new value from Supabase. So we can call this function. And hopefully, if everything works, yes, there we go. So we've marked it as complete and moved it to the bottom. And so we have hung out our washing, we've made it look good, and we very much really hope it works. If I tick that one and we go back to Supabase and refresh, you'll see that all of those values are now true. So we've successfully written data from our Clutch application into our Supabase database. Awesome. And that's, yeah, everything that I wanted to go through. I'll just quickly pull this up again. Yep. Yeah, there we go. So we built our application. Thanks for listening to my talk. My name's John Myers. Again, follow me on Twitter at DJohnMusters. Were there any questions?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, John, for going through the demo. I feel like our minds are blown. A lot of things that make it a lot easier for us to do coding. So I think while you were, coding away, we have a lot of questions that came in. Most of the time, people are just, wondering whether they can do this and do that with this. So maybe I can go through some of the questions right now. And again, apologies in advance, everyone, that I am not a coder. So maybe my questions would have been answered during John's demo. But if you can go through that again, that would be great. So we do have a questions from CJ. So how do you rate Clutch.io against the likes of Elementor, DV, Oxygen Builder?
Yeah, so I haven't had any experience with those other ones. Clutch is actually the first low-code tool that I have ever used. So yeah, it's this is sort of my first experience with low code. I have a background in software engineering and in the coding side of things, and so yeah, I was just blown away by what I could actually accomplish with Clutch.io, or even Supabase and Clutch. Like as you saw, we were able to build. This isn't like the most crazy application that you'd be able to sell to a million VCs, but this application could be something that we could use for our to speed up our own workflows and sort of build some internal tooling that would help us do our job. And we were able to do that, all of that really only writing 2 functions. And so if you think about how much you would be able to accomplish on your own building that stuff, and then once you've sort of proven that this tool has value, or this thing that you want to build would have value to the product, you can kind of prioritize a little bit of time for just someone to write those small pieces to glue it all together and wire it up. Like we only needed to write 1 function to insert a value and 1 function to update a value. But the rest of the application we were able to build ourselves, which is super, super powerful.
That's great. So just riding on that same, comparison question. So we have a questions from Nicolay asking about, comparison between Clutch and Figma. I think you mentioned Figma earlier on as well. So does it have the potential to exceed Figma's capabilities? For example, publishing a website right after you have designed it, if you can just compare these two quickly.
Yeah, totally. So Figma is very much a design tool. So that is, it is built to create these kinds of visual layouts and mock-up designs, but it's not built to be a fully functioning application, and it's definitely not built to pull live data from a real database. A lot of what you'll do in Figma is use static example text, like mock up 3 or 4 to-dos that might be in a to-do list, but is not often linked to real data. And so that's the power of Clutch, is you're able to kind of use some of those design tools to mock things up nicely, but have it connected to real databases, real data. And then, as you saw, like we clicked a publish button and created a new version, and that automatically deployed a version of that application that's available on the internet. And I'm not sure if Figma can do that, but I haven't experienced that in Figma. I've never done that in Figma. It might have the capability to do so, but again, that would be based on that static data rather than this live data that's coming from our Supabase database.
Yeah,
that's the question.
Great. I think so. I think that also answers another questions that we have later on, which is, can I do real-time updates of my to-do? Which I think based on what you share, they can actually pull in real-time data versus like just a set of data that you gave to it at the time of creations. So I think it also help.
Well, yeah, just quickly on that. So the extension that I was using, Supabase, in Clutch.io, that's something that's in active development at the moment, but it doesn't implement absolutely everything that Supabase can do. It does implement some of the stuff around auth, but I haven't had a look into the real-time stuff yet. But yeah, there are some parts of that extension that wouldn't map one-to-one with what Supabase can do.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's great. Thank you so much for the clarification. So maybe we can move on to the next batch of questions. So there's a lot of questions about, comparing low code, no code versus the traditional coding, which I think is very apt since we are trying to answer that question today. So one question is from Nicolay, which I think a lot of people are curious about. Of course, the demo is really great and it's really fast. So he just want to know more about, like, just to get some perspective, how long would this exercise have taken if you didn't have these tools available? Do you have like a brief estimation of how it would take in a traditional coding way?
Oh, in building like a traditional web app. Yeah, so I mean, we were able to very quickly click these pieces together. And so because so much of this has been built for us and us being able to just kind of drag in a text element and then set it to what we would like it to be, it was obviously much faster to do that. And I mean, if you have very little experience with coding or no experience with coding at all, obviously that learning curve would be extremely steep to try and build this in an application rather than in a low code tool. And so I'd say that like for me, putting this example together, I probably built it faster than I would be able to build it in code and explain what I was doing. But yeah, the real enabler here, I think, is that this enables a whole other audience of people to be able to build tools that are valuable, which is awesome.
Sounds great. So I know that we focus on Supabase and Clutch a lot in this demo, but if you can share more about like other non-coding and low-code softwares and applications that are out there, and also we've been talking a lot about the pros, of course, but what are some of the cons of using this low-code, no-code software and applications?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned before, I haven't done too much low code, no code stuff before. My background is traditionally in software engineering, and so I haven't had a deep level of experience with any other tools. I have heard very good things about ScreenFlow. Enables you to kind of do the same thing where you have an escape hatch to be able to write some more complex coding features if you need it. On the low code side of things, Zapier is awesome for being able to kind of move data between different systems. They have nice integrations and automations that you can build to tie different systems together, which is very cool. Yeah. What was the second part of the question? Sorry, I had another answer.
No worries. So, what are some of the cons or like the disadvantages of using low code?
Cons. Absolutely. And so, yeah, this is, I would say one of the cons of this is that being a non-technical person, you may be able to like get a whole, like, a system very close to being this useful functional thing, and then get a little bit frustrated that you can't implement that last little piece. And then I guess on the like asking another developer to come and look at this system, they may want to just rewrite the whole thing in something that they understand better, because it's because they're not used to using a low code tool to do this, and think that they could do something even more powerful with something else. And so I think that the bottleneck would be when you are close to building a fully functioning application and you just want to add that last little bit of advanced functionality to kind of tie everything together. But the pros of it is that you're able to get to that stage without help from anyone else, which is amazing. That you can build an application that's useful without needing to spend years and years and years learning to code.
Right, awesome. Cool. So I think we have time for maybe like 2 or 3 more questions. So I think I'm just gonna move on to the next batch of questions, which is a lot about, I think, also riding on what we have been talking about, which is the cons of low code, no code, or maybe not the cons, but just certain concerns. So here we have 2 questions that are in the same vein. So they are a bit worried about the security of these apps created using, I guess, like low code, no code applications. So is the fact that all of these are open source make intellectual property of our websites more of a difficulty?
I wouldn't be able to speak to the licensing side of it in terms of using these applications and then charging for software that you've built with them. But I would say that there is a potential security risk that exists here, in that the example that we just went through allows anyone to be able to write data to the database. And so if we had more time, obviously we could go through and implement the authentication side of it. But yeah, that's an example of where I guess someone with a bit more experience in coding and a bit more experience in the kinds of security risks that you might come up against would be good to talk to before publishing your application, just to make sure that it's actually safe and that you're not exposing a whole bunch of customer data or something like that. But again, like that's something that's really cool about Clutch, is that you can build this whole application without making it live. So you could build something that is a really useful tool for you to do your job. And then only once you've actually talked, like if you want to make this a publicly available tool that other people on the team can use, then you can talk to developers on your team or something like that that have experience with those kinds of security risks that you might want to take into consideration before publishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds great. So since we are talking back about Clutch, I think we just have like maybe 2 last questions, mostly talking or to clarify a little bit more about Supabase and Clutch. So so are Supabase and Clutch integrated, or do they must they work with each other, or they can be separate programs? And the second question is, in what occasions would they need to use the paid version of Supabase and Clutch?
Sorry, what was the last part? When
like
would we use?
Yeah, when do they need to use the paid version of Supabase and Clutch?
A paid version?
A paid version, like a subscription.
Oh, paid version, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, my bad. Yeah, so to tackle the first question, yeah, Supabase and Clutch are completely separate products. So they're not, they're not sort of associated. They're just, something that the community of both Supabase and Clutch have been asking for some more examples to tie these two together, because obviously Supabase is a very powerful way to build a backend, and Clutch is a very powerful way to build a front end. So it makes sense to kind of glue these two together. And so that extension that we were using, I believe Paul actually does work at Clutch. But yeah, there are a range of extensions that have just been built by the community because people are excited about extending the functionality of Clutch and Supabase as well. And so, yeah, you can use these products as completely independent things. You could build like Supabase is definitely not limited to low code or no code or code optional software. You get a full database and auth and everything, which you could then go and build your own custom application that talks to Supabase. And so, yeah, you don't need to use these two tools together. Yeah, it's just a nice way to build a full stack application. And in terms of the pricing, everything that we did in this example is on the free tier for both of these applications. They're both also in beta, so there's probably a lot that is included in the free tier to encourage people to play with them and build cool stuff. I haven't looked into, I don't think there is a paid model for Clutch yet. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure while in beta, everything that they offer is free. And Supabase has a paid tier for some of the more advanced stuff that you might want to do. But that would be once you get into building a production level application, that you would hit those paid brackets.
All right, amazing. So I think that's also bring us to the end of the session. Thank you so much, John, again for the amazing demo and also showing us, what low code, no code is capable of and how we as normal like non-coding people can actually code something useful ourselves and then just make our work a lot easier. So thank you also for powering through our many questions. So I think the participants definitely have a better understanding of this program and the limitations, some of the pros and cons. So to everyone, thank you for being a very engaged audience and asking many great questions for us to learn from one another. So just a note that this session is indeed recorded. So we will send out the recording afterwards. So if you have friends who are not able to join or just want to know more about this, you can pass that along. I mean, it will also be made available on Supabase YouTube channel after this. So if you want to check that out, get in touch with the team. Be sure to look out for our follow-up email. Right, and that is all from us. Thank you so much, John, once again. And yeah, looking forward for our future events then.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Bye-bye.